Good morning. I hope everybody is doing well. So our topic today is sexual orientation and gender identity. I do have a short presentation where we will go over some definitions and kind of explain some trends that, we're seeing nationwide, not just at Piedmont, but, across like the country. Um, and then I do want to we'll have plenty of time for you guys to ask questions. I'll share some of my experiences with this with my own children. But definitely feel free to ask questions. This is a total safe space. This is a topic that can make people feel uneasy, but I think being that it's a topic that makes people feel uneasy, it's actually a super important topic for us to talk about and understand, especially with some of the stuff I'm going to present today with like terms of definitions and things like that, so that you as parents understand the language that your children may be using. So with that, I also do want to say that I'm at a different location today. I have meetings all day at the district office. So if you notice my background, I try to blur it because it's a storage cabinet behind me. But I just am doing this Zoom from a different location today, so I'm a little discombobulated. But let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so sexual orientation and gender identity expression is our topic today. There we go. So this term, sexual orientation and gender identity expression, can also be shorthand for SOGI. So SOGI, when we talk about SOGI, what are we talking about? So sexual orientation, when we are talking about sexual orientation itself, that is describing the emotional, romantic, and or physical feelings of attraction, usually over a period of time. This is distinct from sexual behavior. Sexual behavior is like, acting out and like performing sexual acts. Sexual orientation is really who you're attracted to. And so that is definitely different than gender expression, okay? So that's one thing to really understand, that, a student, like a male student, could be attracted to other males, but that doesn't mean that they have confusion about their gender expression. Or vice versa. A male student can be attracted to female students. I shouldn't say students, a male person. Sorry, I'm always in my mind talking about students because I'm the principal of the school. But this isn't, we're talking about people. So a male can be attracted to a female, but then have some feelings about their gender expression and maybe the way they want to express themselves as their gender. So gender expression is the ways in which individual communicates their genders through others. So this is like their behavior, the way they act, clothing, hairstyle, the way they project their voice. It's not necessarily an indication of gender identity or sexual orientation. One example that we might, talk about, painting fingernails. That's something traditionally that's always been associated with women, but a lot of men now paint their fingernails. And so that's something that, is kind of a trendy thing. So that so that's an example where you can see gender expression, and sometimes some lines can be blurred with that. Um, Gender identity, sorry, I've got lots of people jumping in the Zoom. Gender identity is one's internal personal sense of their gender. Gender identity is best represented as a spectrum. Some people may identify as a female, but maybe in a lot of ways they feel more masculine, where they tend to, like your typical tomboy, like you can think of. So like that's when we talk about a spectrum, like you have your girly girl or a tomboy. Like gender identity definitely is something that's on a spectrum. And then we have the term sex assigned at birth. The sex assigned at birth, by a doctor, it's based on physical anatomy and hormones. Designations include male, female, or intersex. Now, this is in the state of California. Now, you guys, I'm going to try to be very neutral in this presentation and just explain to you some definitions. I definitely have my opinions. You may guess at what they are. I tend to be very liberal in my ideas and my personal philosophy. But today I am going to be very, I'm going to try as much as I can to be very neutral in how I present this. In the state of California, on birth certificates now, the designations include male, female, and intersex. In some states, that is not the case. In some countries, that's not the case. So that's just something to be aware of. I am going to send out this presentation. It's not very long. It's only 9 slides, but it does have some links to some other resources. So you see here, there's a link to some different types of like terms and things like that. So, this is something that you could use as a resource later on. I'm assuming all of you are familiar with the term LGBTQ, or maybe you're just like the even like shortened when I was growing up in the 90s, they talked about the LGBT. So the L is for lesbian. That is a woman who's primarily attracted to women. The G stands for gay. It's a man, that term is a man who's primarily attracted to men. Gay is also sometimes a broad term for individuals primarily attracted to the same sex. So lesbian, like we just said, is a woman primarily attracted to women, but lesbians are also gay. So gay is often a broader term. Bisexual is an individual who's attracted to people of their own and opposite genders. The T, now this is something that, why this is a little bit new, because on this we have 2 different T's. So you have transgender, a person whose gender identity differs from their assigned sex at birth. Remember, we just learned that term, sex assigned at birth. And then you have transsexual. This is an outdated term, all right? So this is a term we tend not to use anymore. Transgender is the more accepted term. Transsexual is an outdated term that originated in the medical and psychological communities from people who had permanently changed their gender identity through surgery and through hormones, but we tend not to use the term transsexual anymore. Q can stand for either 2 things. Queer, this is an umbrella term to be more inclusive of the many identities and variations making up the LGBTQ plus community. So queer is a term that used to be a derogatory term. Now it's an accepted term where this community is like taken over that term and like brought ownership of it. And it's an umbrella term that kind of covers everything. Q can also stand for questioning, the process that somebody might go through of exploring and discovering one's own sexual orientation and gender identity and or gender expression. Intersex is an individual whose sexual autonomy or chromosomes do not fit with the traditional markers of female or male. So this is remember I told you, intersex is actually an option on birth certificates. A can be one of 2 things. It can be an ally, typically a non-queer person who supports and advocates for the queer community. An individual within the LGBTQ plus community can be an ally for each other, or another member that identifies differently than them. I myself consider myself an ally. Asexual is an individual who generally does not feel sexual desire or attraction to any group of people. It's not the same as celibacy and has many subgroups. So asexual is somebody that they just don't feel attraction. When they say subgroups, there's people that could be like demisexual. Demisexual is usually like somebody has to develop a relationship and a friendship with that person first before they feel sexual attraction. So they have to have like a really close relationship. So they don't just like find people attractive and like are sexually attracted to them. They have to actually get to know the person first. So that's why that means like there's many subgroups. So like, some people are like not attracted to anybody at all. Some people, it's very rare, but it does occasionally happen. So there's different, this is actually a pretty broad group. And then finally, a pansexual, a person who experiences sexual, romantic, physical, and or spiritual attraction to members of all gender identities, expressions, and not just people in the same standard gender binary. Pansexual is often confused with bisexual. Bisexual is a older term. It's still used though. But bisexual means that, kind of like in the gender norms, like I'm attracted to women and I'm also attracted to men. Whereas pansexual means you're attracted to everybody. Kind of you can say like on the spectrum of like asexual, like you're not attracted to anybody. Pansexual, you're attracted to all types of people, no matter what. And so like this is something that I really like, I want as parents us to understand these terms, because these are terms that our kids, like they are very familiar with these terms, like in just the world that they live in and social media and the internet and what they're exposed to, they are very familiar with these terms. And so they may use these terms with you and bring these up. And I want you as parents to actually know what they're talking about. Okay, so why are we talking about this more? Why am I telling you that this is actually an important topic for us to discuss? These are statistics of different generations and of the number of the population in these generations that self-identify as part of the queer community. Of the baby boomers are people who are born between 1954 and 1964. 2.6% of baby boomers identify as queer. Gen X, which is 1965 to 1980, that's the generation that I'm in, and I'm assuming a lot of you are too. Some of you may be millennials. But 4.2% of Gen X identifies queer. Of the millennial generation, which is 1981 to 1996, that's 10.5% of millennials. And then Gen Z, which is our kids who are currently in high school. These are people born between 1997 and 2012. 21% of Gen Z identify as queer. So this is becoming a lot more accepted and a lot more where our kids that are in high school now, they are a lot more open to these ideas of expressing their sexual identity, sexual orientation, and sexual and gender identity. And there's a lot of, I hear a lot from kids now in high school, and this like, well, why do we have to label things? Why can't I just be? And like, I just, and so like, this is just, I think in society becoming much more accepted, and amongst their generation, much more accepted. And this is my personal belief. I do not believe that it's actually changed all that much. I think what's changed is society has changed, and we're as society a lot more open to these ideas, as opposed to the baby boomer generation, which was my parents' generation, where this wasn't accepted at all. And you had many more people in the closet and not being willing to be free with expressing themselves. Okay, so some statistics and facts for you. Transgender and non-binary youth who reported having pronouns respected by all the people they lived with attempted suicide at half the rate that those who did not. So when the family accepts the youth and uses the pronouns that they prefer, that goes a long way to that youth's mental health and feeling acceptance and having a stable mental health. 42% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. 52% for for transgender and non-binary youth. So this is a really important topic. So that's why we have to talk about this, because it's something, somebody like dropped something outside the window. I don't know if you guys can hear that, sorry. So this is a really important topic for us to talk about and that we have to be aware of, because it's our job as parents to protect our kids and support our kids. 75% of LGBTQ youth report that they had experienced discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity at least once in their lifetime. So discrimination, like I said, it is more accepted now, but discrimination still definitely happens. And then 94% of LGBTQ youth reported that recent politics negatively impacted their mental health. I'm sure you are all aware that there's a lot of negative stuff happening in the world right now. And there's a lot, it seems like as a society in recent years, we've almost backtracked a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot of it. And that can be very harmful to the students who fall under this in this group. And I think we need to be really conscious of the negative mental health impacts that these students and youth can be facing. So let's talk a little bit about gender pronouns. You have, obviously she, her, hers, herself. And then he, him, his, himself. These are, the typical what we learned. Most, I don't want to say most. Then they have they, them, theirs, themselves. A lot of kids that I have had relationships with that have said they're non-binary, they prefer the they, them, theirs pronouns. You do have where people have come up with like brand new language. Like, so this is where you get the Z, the hers, zer, hers, zers. This is actually pretty rare. I'm gonna be honest, I have not actually seen this in the real world. I've heard about it, but like in my own experience with like talking to people who use different pronouns, I have not, this last one, I personally have never experienced. But again, there's links here. So if you wanted to find out more information about this, there are some links. So what do you do if your child as a parent comes out to you, or maybe you stumbled on something like, you heard something or you found something and you found out and they didn't actually come out to you. These are, I think these are pretty sound recommendations. They're definitely my recommendations, but I think they're pretty sound. What do you want to say to your child? I love you no matter what. Thank you for trusting me. How can I support you? I appreciate you coming to me. I'm here to talk about anything. If it doesn't go well, if like the conversation, if they like shocked you and like you're like, don't know what to say at first, and maybe you feel like you didn't handle it really well right at first, as soon as you can, go to them and say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle that the way I like to. I love you no matter what. And like, then do it. Because we are human. And sometimes we can be a little stunned. So I'm going to share with you guys some personal information. My daughter came out to me when she was a freshman in high school. I think she was a freshman. And actually, she didn't even really come out to me. I asked her. She had been going out. She was supposed to go out on a date with this boy, and she was acting really strange about it. She didn't really want to go, and she was just acting like I could just tell there was something going on with her. And I asked her, it was like, Hannah, do you even like boys? And she burst into tears and she's like, I don't know, I don't think so. And I was, totally fine with it. And like I said, like I love you. I hugged her, like it's okay. Um, and she later, when they say, we talk about now sexual orientation as a spectrum, my daughter has embraced that spectrum. When she was in high school, she was fully in like, I am a lesbian and I don't like boys. She went to college and she started dating boys again. She now has a boyfriend, like a very serious boyfriend. So she actually would describe herself as I actually don't know if she uses the term bisexual or pansexual. Um, like again, this generation, they're not really like super attached to labels. But she, very much embraces the spectrum of who she is attracted to. I had to really help her. She decided that she wanted to come out to my parents, her grandparents, several years ago at Thanksgiving, which in hindsight, doing it at a major holiday probably wasn't the best bet. My parents didn't handle it very well. My mom, I think, was very like shocked and didn't really say anything. She had this look of like on her face of like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And she just like kind of stumbled through it. And this is actually a little bit of a funny story. My dad seemed to just ignore it. And then but then like later on, Hannah had a girlfriend, her girlfriend would be at family dinners with us. And, my parents were lovely to her girlfriend and it was fine. Um, last year, this was last year, last spring, I was talking to my dad about Hannah's ex-girlfriend. And strangely enough, Hannah's ex-girlfriend and her current boyfriend look very similar. They could be brother and sister. And I was laughing about it. And I was telling my dad, like, oh, isn't that funny? That her girlfriend and boyfriend look so similar. And my dad was like, what are you talking about, girlfriend? And I'm like, well, Hannah's bisexual, Dad. You know that. And he didn't know that because when Hannah announced, my dad is hard of hearing. And when Hannah made this announcement at Thanksgiving a couple years ago, he didn't hear her. And like my dad has this tendency because he's hard of hearing, like he just like goes along the flow and like doesn't listen to half to like what's going on. And he just we like I know now, like I pick up the clues when he's not listening, but I did not realize that he didn't hear her. He didn't hear her. And so for years, like we all thought he knew and he didn't. Um, he does now. It's all fine. But that's how, like with my own family, you know, we dealt with my daughter coming out. So things to be careful not to do. Be careful not to ignore it. Um, be careful to say, not to say I knew it. Um, though you may have been like, it may be like, yeah, there was never a doubt in my head that you weren't straight. But it's like their big announcement and like blowing it off and being like, oh, I knew that. You're kind of like bursting their bubble a little bit because they've psyched themselves up to tell you about it. So even though that might be going through your head, let them, let them have their moment. Don't say it's just a phase or you can't know for sure. And this is where my mom, God rest her soul, because she's no longer with us. My mom was guilty of this, and she would talk about, well, Hannah's like going through this phase. It's not a phase. You know, if you have a child that's questioning their gender and falling into the non-binary, realm, don't dismiss that as just a phase. I think it's really important to let them, you know, lead the way with this and talk about what they feel comfortable with this. And then finally, it's very, very harmful to use religion to change them. That is and this may be a sticky topic, but there's been a lot of studies where it's very, very harmful to the person. And I don't think as parents, we ever want to harm our children. So like I said, there are resources. I'm going to share this out when I share out the recording of today. I will share out these resources. So hopefully these will be helpful to you. Let's see. Hey, in the chat, if you guys have any comments, please feel free to put them in a chat. Thing says, this is a great discussion topic. It is a difficult conversation to have with a teenager that's going through a lot already. And honestly, it's more difficult, sorry, I bumped up, for the older generation to handle the talk and accept the child's sexuality with an open mind. My question is how to differentiate if this is a discovery stage or for attention. I would be careful to think that it's for attention, because there is still a lot of discrimination out there. And so I would say that this would be a weird thing for a child or a teenager to do to get attention. It may be that they're questioning and they are confused about feelings that they're having, and they quite don't know where they fit. With this, my son, for example, my son is 14, soon to be 15 in a couple of months. I think he falls really in that asexual column. He has not expressed any sort of attraction, and like just like to movie stars and famous people, like of the either male or female. And so I think at this phase, they may be figuring out where they're fitting. So I don't think it's a matter of getting attention, but it may be that they're questioning a lot. And so I think as a parent, it's important to ask them questions about how they're feeling and try to reserve your judgment and your opinion as much as you can. And don't just like, well, this is what I think you are, and this is because that can be harmful. Just like let them, talk this out, be a safe space for support. And let them be the safe place for them. And so to let them question things and talk to you about how they're feeling about things, I think that goes such a long way with the relationship you're going to have with them in the future. I was talking to my two girlfriends about this this past weekend. So every weekend on Saturday mornings, I had this new tradition that my two girlfriends and we go to yoga in the park, and then we go out to coffee together. And it's actually become my favorite part of the week. And I think in all of our middle age, we should have friends that we like do this sort of thing with. And I hope that for all of you. But we were at coffee the other morning, and both of my friends have children that are on the non-binary spectrum, where, they are questioning their gender. They're neither are fully like transitioning, but, they're more in that non-binary phase or area, not phase, God, and that's not what I meant to say. And they were talking about, my one friend is in this like mother support group for parents that are of children who are in the LGBTQ plus area. And so she's in the support group. And so she's talking about how, obviously these parents are in the support group. They themselves are supportive, but the struggles they have with other family members, with grandparents, cousins, that sort of, especially if they live in different areas of the country or, different cultures and things like that, and how much they struggle with that. And, this one, my friend was telling me about this one woman that was in the group and that her ex-husband is just not supportive at all and how terrible it is. We talked about, and I think I had mentioned this, the past couple of weeks when we were reading the book together, The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. And one thing I got out of that book is the work you do with your teenager as they're a teenager, you're laying the foundation of the relationship that you're going to have with them as an adult and the relationship they're going to have with you. And I think that the more that we can be supportive of our teens, especially if they're like, these are real life, heavy duty things that they can be stressed about and worry about and question themselves about. And us being supportive of them is just laying the foundation that when they're an adult, they're going to like know that they can have a relationship with you and that you support them. And I think that that's just so important. So hopefully I answered your question. This next question is easier. Rupert already answered it in the chat, but I'm going to put that out there for people who just are going to watch this later because they don't get to see the chat. Does Piedmont offer gender neutral restrooms? Yes, we do. We actually have 3 of them. Well, technically 4, but in 3 different areas of campus. The one that's the most popular is right outside my office. It's like right next to the principal's door. We have the key hanging in. So they're all locked because they're single stall restrooms. And so we do have a key to them that the students need to get, but it's just hanging on the inside of the door in my office. They don't even have to ask for it. Some kids are super polite. They're like, can I use the bathroom? And I'm like, of course, you don't even have to ask, just grab the key. There's also one down by the art classrooms, and then there's 2 in the new science wing. And in the student handbook and on our website, there's a place where we talk about our gender neutral restrooms and where the keys can be located. When our new construction is finished in our new performing arts building, there also will be gender neutral bathrooms in the new building. So there'll be even more once that's done. But really great question about that. That's actually really important. And there's no limit on like, you have to be a non-binary student to use the gender neutral classrooms. All students are allowed to use them. Some students prefer the absolute privacy of the single stall bathroom, and I totally respect that. So, especially our male students, they enjoy the privacy. Any other questions or comments that you guys may have?
Jenny, I'll add my perspective. I wanted to answer the question too. Is it how to differentiate between the two? I
Yeah.
would say you don't. You support either way because you don't want to lean any other way and influence how they react to you. So how to explain that is as a male who wouldn't typically be an ally or be supportive of the LGBTQ population of students, I am. I'm very much supportive because I feel the more positive male who look like I look, who support them, the easier they are to navigate through society in general. Because it's very difficult. Masculinity sometimes will um, get the better of an individual and they feel like they can't be supportive of something, even if they agree with the student or not. And I don't think it's a choice or a lifestyle or anything like that. I don't think it's something that just magically happens to a child and um, I just think that they're raised to be a certain way because that's what we are used to as our in our own kind of just how we were raised. And it's not positive or negative. It's nothing like to say that how we were raised was wrong. It's just how our parents are traditionally raised as well. So when we get students who um, are having difficulties navigating even their own adolescence, right? Because we all struggle with who we are and who we are now. Um, I think the more that we support these students, especially in the school system, as their teachers, their educators, the people who are working with them daily, the more and more we show them that they are accepted here. And I hope we would be able to do that at other school sites, because I think Piedmont Hills is pretty much open-minded for the most part as far as the whole population of staff and students go. So I think it's a little easier to be yourself here. But I do feel that as a male specifically, and if there's somebody watching this, because I know we don't get too many males active in the discussions for coffee, but I would just want to say that, like, as an adult parent of a 15-year-old, 13-year-old, 2 and 1, that I stay consistent, and I don't judge, no matter how my personal beliefs are, because if I want to raise a positive thinking family, student, anything, I have to show support 100%. So I think, like, to answer the question is, you support whether you think it's a discovery stage, questioning, they're going for attention. Even if they're trying to get attention, it could be something to test you. Their friend could be on the spectrum of the pronouns or anything like that. And they might want to just see how you would react if
How
I
you read
was
it.
that, or if
Yeah.
I have a friend, or what if it was me, or they could be asking for a sibling and they want to see they're protective of their sibling. So I think as and I don't and I'm just trying to give you the male perspective. I,
No,
I
but
would hope that
I think
everybody
it's
would do the same.
I think that's a good point. What they may like float like, oh, my friend or a student I know at school is going through this. I used to do that when I was a teenager. Things that I was going through, I would float little like, oh, my friend is doing this, just to see how my parents would react. And then I knew like whether I could share or not what was actually going on with me. Definitely that was something that yeah, that's a good point, Rupert. Virginia, I see that you put your camera on. So does that mean you have something you want to add?
Sure, I can add to that. Um, Thank you, Rupert. I appreciate your male perspective. What sticks out to me is when we say, "Oh, it's just a phase." We all go through these phases. But it's okay. Like it's it's an okay phase. There's so many things in life that we have to figure out, and things we like and things we don't like, and that's for everything that we go through. So just like Rupert said, just supporting them, no matter whether you feel it's a phase or not a phase, like whatever it is, just support them. One story I have to share is me and my husband are different generations, and he is not very supportive of that community, or not understanding, I should say, not necessarily supportive, but not understanding. And we have had this discussion a couple of times, and I told him no matter what our children say or do, you're going to accept them, period. And yes, we've had to go into detail about, like, he's like, no, he's not gonna, because we have 4 boys. I won't accept it if he's gay or whatever. And I'm like, no, you are. Whether you like it or not, you are. We are. Like, you don't have a choice. That is who they are. Does that tell you that he's less of a person? Does that tell you that, like, and I'll break it down to him and he'll be like, yeah, you're right. It's just hard for me, because that's how he was raised. He was raised differently, different culture, different religion, and a different generation. So I've had to help educate him on the newer generation and on how to accept it, and just a different view. And, I realize that a lot of times the older generation kind of worry about what others are going to see of them. And it's like, we need to get over that. It's not about what others are going to think of us, or what others are going to think of our kids, or whatever that case is. And that's kind of how his mentality is, especially coming from a very traditional Mexican background. Times are different, and we really have to adapt to these new changes in society. And
Yeah.
I'm happy for these kids who are able to become more of themselves now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Virginia, for sharing with your own spouse. But like my experience was I had to really like talk to my parents, of an older, and you guys that are in a similar situation might find that too. Our parents, they're of a different generation. We talked about the different generations. My dad, when he finally heard me and was not like just being hard of hearing, he was actually like super worried about like, oh my gosh, she's going to face discrimination and like things like that. And because my dad's not even baby boomer because he's 89 years old. Like he's like silent generation. He's a generation before that. Like this is super like, oh my gosh, this isn't something you share with people. You're not open about this. And he really struggled with that, not struggling with, and that's what he struggled with. He didn't struggle with my daughter being bisexual. He struggled with how is society going to react to her. And he didn't want anything, like he was just really worried and didn't want anything bad to happen to her. And I had to really like, no, Dad, it's okay. And she's going to be okay. And the world is a lot more accepting now. Yeah, bad things still happen, but we're actually really lucky. We live in California. Like we're in an accepting society, and that it's going to, she'll be okay. And that it's our job to support her. Virginia, did you have something else?
I just want to say also, it has to do with understanding and educating yourself. A lot of people, again, fear a lot of things, but once you start interacting with these type of people, or making yourself multicultural. So again, my husband, wasn't for that, but for 8 years, I think it was, my brother, who's fully gay, older than me, lived with us, not any different. And my husband seen that. My husband was seeing like, oh, he's not different. He's still my brother-in-law. He's still, this caring person. We still loved him no matter what. And it's like, it's just taking that time to educate yourself and understand this lifestyle, because they struggle through a lot of negative things as well, and discrimination and stuff. And it's just understanding.
Yeah. Question in the chat: at Piedmont, do you see any bullying happening towards the LGBTQ plus students, or do you find that most students are accepting and supportive? Honestly, I feel that our community and our student body is very accepting and supportive. And I'm somebody that, this is my 6th year as principal, but actually, I don't know how many of you know this about me. I taught at Piedmont in the early 2000s, and then I left for a number of years and I've come back. And so just seeing the change, like I see every day 2 girls holding hands and walking together, 2 boys holding hands and walking together. It's and like no fear and no like worrying about that. And so I do feel that our students are accepting and supportive. Rupert, would you agree?
Yes, but I've been here 7 years. Once in 7 years have I heard anything like that, and I believe it was kids had a booth and something was said towards the kids at the booth. The next time we had booths, myself and another faculty member stood outside their booth, and never since have I seen anybody say or anything. But usually, to be honest with you, here, um, it's usually isolated. Usually, older siblings will say something to the group of friends if they're like younger. It's never anything where it's like, I'm bullying you specifically because you're LGBTQ. Never.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're very lucky at Piedmont.
I
Okay.
think we're lucky in a lot of ways
Yes.
here.
Yes.
We're very, it's not indicative of what's the society norms here, but I think we're very like, the kids that are here are going to be more astute to handle everything in normal society because we're pretty open here. That's staff, students. I don't think anybody really pays attention to it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for participating in this conversation. Hopefully you learned some things, or you like feel more comfortable with this. If you ever need help on a one-on-one individual basis, I'm here. Our social workers are here, definitely here to support you. Our topic for next week is we're going to talk about sibling relationships. We did sibling relationships for the first time last year, and it was, I think it was one of my favorite topics. So it's like a whole, like, God, the sibling relationships are like, like such a complicated relationship. So we are going to, that's our topic for next week. So I hope you guys, have a wonderful rest of your week. Enjoy yourself. Don't forget to, set your clock forward. This is when we lose an hour. That happens this weekend. So don't forget to do that this on Sunday, because this is the one where we lose the hour, but it stops being dark at 6 o'clock at night. So, all right, everyone, have a great, rest of your day. Okay, bye. Thank you.